Hello and welcome to the Band of One podcast. I am Riley Wilson. This podcast is designed for anybody that wants to start, grow, or maintain an existing solo or small group performing career, or just want to be a solo musician, entrepreneur, maybe a teacher or a writer, some sort of performer. The idea here is to give you something that's actionable, fun, and entertaining that hopefully will help you to make more money and enjoy the process. If you like what we do, make sure and like, subscribe, and share the podcast with others. Let's get underway.
Guitar Made Simpler, an intelligent approach, is the first all-new guitar method in years. Riley Wilson, veteran guitar teacher, writer, and performer, has taught this same material successfully to thousands of students since 1987. This logical approach will help anyone begin mastering the world's most popular instrument. A combination of formal notation with guitar tablature and included MP3 disc guarantee your success. Online video by the author demonstrating performing examples slowly and correctly. Start making real progress on the guitar. Order your copy today at guitarmadesimpler.com.
This is part 2 of my visit with one of my favorite instructor mentors, Les Wise. Les, once again, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much. I sure appreciate it.
So we're talking about writing, and as you said, you decided to get on the bandwagon of writing books, and you've written several over the years. I happen to have one that you are actually in. And this particular book, the 10 book, which was something that was available for a really short period of time, has got a lot of music examples from you and everybody else that was at that particular time a part of the Musicians Institute experience. Let's talk about, you started in 79. I take it that you're not involved with the school anymore, and how did that sort of transpire? And after I left MI, kind of fill me in about your involvement, not just with that, but books and teaching and all of that.
Yeah, well, the thing too, I've done some workshops at MI, but I didn't want to go back there. I didn't want to go back there to teach permanently, even though Thursday they had another reunion.
I heard about that.
Big reunion like we had. The
Yeah.
big, but they had a small reunion just on Thursday. But yeah, as far as the from the MI thing or whatever, towards the end of, I think I taught maybe 13,000 students by the time.
I'm sure you did every bit of that.
89 came, yeah. And so what happens, a couple of students wanted to start a school in Europe. And so I went to Europe and started a school like G.I.T. in a way in Vienna. And so I went, it was called the American Institute of Music. And so I went there for about 6 years. And so that's where I went away from MI for a while. But the other thing happened, it was probably a blessing in disguise in some ways, because like in 1990 or 91, the guy that owns ESP Guitars and the other, he bought the school. And so when he bought the school, he got rid of the jazz program, he got rid of the fusion program, and that's why they started another school. A drummer started a school in Pasadena. And that's where Frank and Bali ended up teaching over there, and some other teachers end up there, and that kind of ended for a while, that particular era of the school.
You know, the thing that hurts so much about that, I don't mean to interrupt, the thing that hurts so much about that is that Howard was, besides being a great session player, Howard was a jazz guy. And all of you early guys, you and Don Mockrani, you guys could play the snot out of that kind of stuff. And for me to do away with that, Frank, you mentioned Frank Gambale. Frank was there 6 months before I did, and I got accepted for that September 82 class. Les, I'm really glad I wasn't in that class. I know that, I remember watching him just play guitar in the lunchroom and just tearing the guitar up as a student. And of course, Frank has become, and it really has always been, a world-class guitar player. So many guys like that. Scott Henderson was my private teacher. And I had so many lucky things that happened. There was so much serendipity in that. But I also, for anybody that wants to know more about this, get the Pat Hicks book, Trading Fours. Pat was also a guy that I love dearly. I learned a lot from Pat. I learned some things to do and some things not to do, but I think that's probably true of most of us. but that's a great kind of a thing about that. Let me ask you a question. What was it like teaching in Europe?
So Europe was good because basically we created the American Institute of Music, so everybody showed up there. That we ended up teaching over the years we were there, maybe 650 students, maybe altogether. But they were the same as any other place. They wanted to learn this stuff and get the knowledge that they couldn't get. So we kind of like brought America to them. I could say Hollywood too, but we kind of brought that together. So yeah, it was great for that for sure. There was some good. I brought some musicians over. I brought a drummer from Baton Rouge whose name is Jeff Boudreau. So yeah, but in any case, yeah, that turned out good. And we had Joe DiOrio came there and Mike Stern and drummer and Steve Smith and all kinds of people over the years and Jim Hall and it went on and on. But yeah, it was definitely they wanted to learn the same thing. It was just that some people, the European students that came and even more came after you, but they came there. But there was some students that it isn't that they didn't have the money to come to Hollywood, but they had a wife and kids and they didn't want to leave them for
Yes.
free. You already know this when you're getting married and writing songs and doing stuff. So that was a problem. Yeah, that was.
I completely get that. I tell people that 1983, 84 was the most watershed year of my life. I moved from Raleigh to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
My fiance moved from Houston to Los Angeles. We got married. I joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints 3 weeks after I got married, which was July
Wow.
4th, the same year. And I'm trying to navigate Hollywood and trying to go to school and trying to learn all of this stuff. And I have to tell you, it was a lot of it was really a lot of it was really overwhelming. And so it
Yeah,
was.
Latter Day Saints. It's interesting because at GIT, I think it was about 1986, maybe or seven. So I went to teach at Brigham Young. And so they flew me to Salt Lake City and bring in and the band director and all the school and stuff, some really good players. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting about all of that is that one of the things that I noted when I was there is that I had never seen such a quest for a hunger for excellence. And I want to address that because that's something that you got at an early age. And I have to ask, going back as a kid in New Orleans, how did you gravitate, not only gravitate, but work so hard as a young player to get to a point where you're not only playing, but you're teaching at a pretty early age? I guess what was the impetus to help you to focus on being just really great at what you do, which you are?
Well, I think well, thank you very much. I think the main thing is that music first called me. I didn't choose one day out of a catalog and go, I think I want to be, should I be a particle physicist or aircraft mechanic? You see, so I didn't have a choice. It picked me when I walked in a room at a friend's house and I had a guitar and I wrapped my hands around the neck of this thing and I go, oh, this is a guitar. I've never tried that before. And the hands never uncurled it for half a century. Isn't it crazy? It's like, so I think, in New Orleans, no one ever questions whether it can be done. It's just when because you see so many people that are a little better than you and a little better than you. And so in New Orleans, everybody, you just keep playing and you keep getting better. And no one's running around going, you're no good. You have no chance. What are you, crazy? You can't make a living with. Well, first thing you get the thing, you can't make a living with music, so don't do it.
Yeah.
And you never get that in New Orleans because all those people have been playing their whole lives in the French Quarter and all over. And so yeah, it's like somebody telling you can't be a riverboat captain. Which, by the way, those guys make like 300 grand a year.
Yeah, yeah.
They go up and down the Mississippi River.
Yeah, and in fact, I've got a buddy that I worked with years ago, but actually the year that before I started at MI, who plays those river brute cruises, and that's an
Yeah,
interesting gig in and of itself.
yeah,
One thing
absolutely.
that
But
I want, one thing I want to address, and this is something that you and I have never talked about. You may or may not even remember this incident, but this had a profound impact on me. And that is, I came to see you privately about 6 weeks before graduation, and you kind of nicely dressed me down. And I think you knew, first of all, you could do that because I had been playing so much the previous 2 years. And I'm glad that you did because you said essentially you've got to improve your work ethic if you hope to continue to make progress as a player. And you just dropped this little water balloon in my lap and you said, I don't know if you'll be able to do that or not.
Yeah, I think
And
that
you
was
just
more my reverse psychology.
yeah, exactly. And it was one of those things that I thought, you know what? I remember leaving your office and I thought, you know, I hear where he's coming from, but I've been doing this for too darn long. I'm not going to stop. I've been playing professionally for 10 years at that point. And I
Great.
think you knew you could play hardball with me. And I want to talk about sometimes teaching to the one because you do that as well as anybody I've ever met.
Well, thank you. Yeah, yeah.
How did you do that? Do you just have that inner
It's just intuitive. You just pick up something. You have the talent, and somebody that has no talent, no ability. I mean, I'm saying no talent, but no propensity towards whatever the discipline, all that. No, you were on the cusp, and all I did was, is just get you ready, because another thing too, sometimes the musicians become really where they become where they can really play good. This is another example that's maybe a little different, but like what happens, they get where they can play, they're incredible monster players, and then they'll come to us or Ronnie or whoever, right, and they go, well, now I can play. And I go, now you play, now what's next, because there's 10,000 guys that can play like that, and that requires that second level of the marketing and the strategic and the other stuff that
yes.
goes with it. And the old school guys, like I'm saying the Jody Orioles and all that, and all the people that were older, people discovered them. They're playing and somebody goes, God, I love that guy. But I remember Pat Metheny told me when one time when he was here, because Joe had asked Pat Metheny about, helping him and promoting him for some gigs. And Pat Metheny said, great. But Pat Metheny, I remember once we were talking, he said, Les, for all those gigs I played over the years, I'd have all the albums in the back of my station wagon, and I would just market myself, which now today is like that's the only way to do it. So in a
Yeah.
way, I think maybe musically, that part there, my thinking was you had the talent. Yeah, I would never said it if you were, and it wasn't to say the dream is dead or whatever. It's just to plant the seed, and maybe it's a New Orleans thing because in New Orleans they like to,
They mess with you.
yeah, they mess with you.
They mess with you.
You're
I had been through that with the horn band. In fact, this was funny. My first professional band, I was 18 years old. The youngest guy in the band beside me was 23.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were all older guys. And I came in the group because I could play rock and roll guitar solos, but this is a group that did Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago and stuff like that.
Oh, which is incredible.
Which was a great background. But those guys gave me crap, and I think that in order to have eventually or create something eventually that's of value, you have to be able to deal with the naysayers, and you have to be able to just move on. I want to talk about the mental part of this because this is something you have been a master of for as long as I've known you, pal. And that is this is your course, The Deliberate Musician. Talk to us about that.
So the deliberate musician was basically a way in which to help musicians, because I'd have a lot of musicians that can really play really well, but they still are always saying the same thing. They can, they're no good. This, oh, I'm no good. Or you come in and the guys, it could be Scott Henderson, anybody. Now, Scott
Sure.
didn't say this, but somebody like that, he's playing a gig and goes, Scott, you sounded so great, which he is. He plays incredible, right? But instead he goes, oh, no, I sounded terrible tonight and the strings are bad, And so I was always, always thought about, that part of it. And so that's where I said, that's where I had decided that I needed to help musicians mentally get by. And look, same thing, the Lakers in L.A. with Shaq and Kobe, and Shaq would have trouble with at the free throw line, and so he had these psychological coaches, and so that was my approach. And the one thing that helped propel that is that years ago, I don't know if you were still there or not, but like CBS or NBC come to see what's this school in Hollywood, this
Wow.
rock and roll school, and I'm talking like I forgot who the main narrator was that came with a camera crew for 6, but it would be like Connie Chung or somebody
Sure.
shows up at the Laura Coates is at GIT
Yeah.
now filming the thing. It was some kind of crazy stuff like that. And I remember I was with Paul Gilbert, or I think we went to lunch together. And Paul came in '84. I think it was
Yeah.
'84, '85 in
He
between.
was there right after I was, and Norman Brown was there like 2 years after I was.
Yeah, Norman too. Yeah, absolutely with Norman. But we're coming up to the thing, and she's asking people. They're doing an outside thing at lunch, and they go, "Why do you want to be a rock star?" They put the thing, "Because I'm going to practice hard, learn legato scales." It goes on and on.
Yeah.
So Paul Gilbert's standing there, which is pretty tall because I'm
Yeah.
6 feet and you're taller too. How old are you? 6'2"?
I'm 6'3". Yeah.
Yeah, you're 6'3". So Paul's a little shorter than you, but he's taller. So they go, "Why do you want to be a rock star?" And because Paul wasn't necessarily so verbose with the wording, right? He goes, "Why not?" And that's all he said to her. And so what happened was because she had interviewed, now remember, this person had interviewed the heads of states, of countries, and all the stuff, right? And she goes, "Well, at least he knows what he wants to do." So there was already that mindset. There was no block, you see. And so that's that why not story because he was,
Sure.
why not? And so that was the opening. And I always remembered that. And I mentioned to him years later, but that's just that where you have no, yeah, there, it's just when, it's not even like they're anticipating when they're going to do this stuff, but they're just going to keep moving in that direction. And there's none of that baggage. So, yeah.
Well, I think one of the reasons that I wanted to talk you and me about all of this today is that I think there are a lot of folks that have listened to the podcast for years that may get to a point where they're playing a few gigs and they feel like, I'm kind of stuck or they want to do more. Guys, there have been a ton of guys that watch this show that are in bands that are thinking about playing solo or playing in a duo or trio. And I always tell people, I think what you really need to do is you need to follow your heart. That was one of the things. In fact, I remember us being interviewed that year. In fact, Kimbo was dragging around a video
Kimbo was the
camera.
thing of Kimbo.
Right, right. Bless his heart. And I said, I said, you can grow up in an area feeling like you're the only person that does or likes what it is that you do. And I said, you come here to MI and all of a sudden you've got 200 other people that are pursuing the same thing that you do. They're pursuing it with the same vigor. And as I said, it was a great experience. And I think it's important for people, whatever it is that they do, particularly if it's musical, is to learn to believe in themselves,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right? And then that self belief, if you continue to say, you know what, I can do this, well, like Paul said, why not?
exactly. And the why not so powerful and so limited, the words, just two words. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's really the great part of it. Les, looking back on your career now, and I know like me, you've been doing this forever. What's the best part of having navigated this path that you've done?
Well, I think there's two parts. One part first to be able to be part of music and play and teach and do this my whole life. So that's one very good thing, that I feel very fortunate. And also fortunate enough, maybe there's three parts. Fortunate enough to teach people like you and ones that are so talented and to see that grow and all that. And so that's definitely for me. And then I think when teaching too, well, when I say teaching, but guiding as a mentor or whatever, is to see the light change in their eyes, those little tiny moments that are one there, not the ones, they got 10, not only Jennifer, but other students that got Grammys and all their stuff, but just that switch. And that's the thing and that's changing people and helping them become who they are. That's
I think the most beautiful thing about my time, not only at MI, but the opportunities that I had in my life with music. I've been playing guitar since I was 10 years old in 1966.
oh, that's why you play so fluid. And
Well, it's been a long time, but it's something that I really do, and I feel like I remember talking to somebody about this in high school that I knew intrinsically when I was 17 or 18. I said, I don't want to do something where I can't wait to get home and have a couple of martinis and forget about the previous 8 hours because I hated it. I want to do something that I really love and something that I feel passionate about. The whole reason this podcast came about, as I told people, is that I had a knee replacement 5 years ago and a hip replacement 2 years ago. And I got tired of laying around after the operation watching YouTube and thinking, is this it? And I decided, you know what? It's time to give back. It's time to talk to people, to share concepts with people, and get information to people that they may not ordinarily have access to. I've said for 40 years, not everybody could go to Hollywood Boulevard and take a year or 2 or 4 years of their life off to study, right? But they can learn a lot of the things that I learned or that you taught or that other people that have been part of with that, and, get better at whatever it is they do because they're willing to make an effort. And I think effort is the most important thing. That's what got you and Ronnie and the other fellow to California in the first place, right?
Exactly. Oh yeah, no, it's just part of the desire. Yeah, no, congratulations to that too. You've done an incredible job, and that's the part with all the experience and all the expertise you have and all the stuff together. It's giving back, and yeah, that's the beauty of it. Is just helping people. And it's the
Let's talk real briefly about gear for just a moment, because I remember that we would always see pictures of you with the big archtop guitars. But when I was at MI, you had a Telecaster that you brought. And of course, in some of your videos, you're playing a Telecaster. Talk about gear, just any favorite guitars that you have or what you
yeah,
enjoy playing.
definitely. Well, the first thing is that I had a gig at the Lighthouse in Hermosa Beach, and my
Hmm.
G.I.T, and I had my Benedetto, that archtop guitar, which
Yeah.
I played, and I had a Super 400 before that, right? I mean, in the jazz part, right? Other things I had over the years, and so what happened was I played this gig with this couple of the horn players from the Tonight Show, right? But in
Yeah.
any case, they were playing kind of loud, and I was having a lot of trouble with feedback and playing all these gigs. And I go, Jesus, maybe I should, because Ted, and the reason I'm saying how the Telecaster came out, Ted Green had mentioned that Ed Bickert, a
Yeah.
Canadian guitar player, played a Telecaster, and Ed Bickert just died not too recently, but he was
Yeah.
older than all of us, right? But Ed Bickert played a Telecaster, and so I said, maybe I should get a Telecaster. So I'm in a room and talking to Frank and Bali about something, and I said, Frank, don't you have a Telecaster? He goes, yeah, I have a '73 Telecaster. He goes, I'll sell it to you. So I bought the Telecaster.
Was that sunburst one that he had?
And so he sold me that guitar. And what I did is I went to John Carruthers,
Yeah.
the super guitar builder, whatever.
Yeah. Down in Venice. I've been to his shop.
Yeah, exactly. His shop, because he had that thing in Santa Monica,
Hmm.
but in any case, so he put three EMGs in. So I started playing the Telecaster, and I played that for years, and I still have. I sold it, but still have another Telecaster that I have, and then I also have a D'Angelico, the thin one, and also I play this here too.
That's beautiful.
So this is like an L5, but it was Lee Ritenour created his own model L5 that's smaller.
Yes.
So for jazz, I use this one here. I have the Telecaster. I mean the Telecaster you see back there. I have a D'Angelico EX ESS, and then I have a Yamaha guitar, and then I have a bunch of other stuff too. But those are the primary ones that I play. Because now within the studio, it makes it a lot easier. Because I have real cameras and I have real control of everything. I can fade to black. I can do anything in the world in the studio.
Wow. That's really cool.
And then then I have different pedals and all that. I have I have gated reverbs. I have an LA2C,
Yep.
which is that plate reverb that they used in all of the records, and Dark Side of the Moon and all that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I have pedal versions of that, and I've got and compressors and other stuff. So I use different things because even though I play jazz, I teach people a lot of different things. And I could say different styles too. But so in any case, gear wise, I have all that stuff, and then I have the Super Reverb, right? And then I have also the Fender Pro, a Tone Master Pro pedal board
Yeah.
now allows me to electronically through the mixer to actually go in and have any amp and any combination of anything.
Yeah.
So the combination I'm using now with this is a Fender Twin with a greenback 412 cabinet from England with a U47 Neumann. So and then I have Neumann monitors. But as far as the guitars, I have a couple of Evans amps
Yep.
Ronnie started endorsing Evan amps, so I have a couple of Evans
Pedal
amps.
steel players love those amps.
They love them, incredible stuff. And so I have Evans amps. I have Quilter amps. I have several of those because they're on the West Coast. So I have the
Yeah.
two. I have the other. Yeah, and then the other thing is just trying to justify with your wife why do you need more than one guitar? Why do you have to have like I don't know 5, 10 amps? Why do
Yeah.
you have guitars under the bed in cases and stuff stored, and then you have a few on the racks? There's like four here, and what do you need with all those
Yeah.
others? And then when I did the True Fire thing, I found a Schecter guitar that, or maybe it was ESP, or maybe a Schecter guitar that was really nice. So yeah, it's all, you know.
I know your thing about gear. Angelica and I went last September up to Detroit. I lived there when I was in junior high school back in the late 60s
Oh, that's good.
and got to go back and visit with my buddy Jack DeFranco.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
So you, yeah.
Jack, I will only say this because I don't want him to hate me. Jack has got more than one guitar.
I
If you're
saw.
ever there in Detroit, go look him up. I know he'd love to see you. And he'll show you more than one guitar. I'll leave it at
Oh
that.
my
One
God,
final
yeah.
question about that. Are you using mostly flat wounds on your jazz guitars?
No, actually, I use round rounds. I use 12 to 50. I use 12 to 52 on these, but on the others, I use other things. And also, I don't play. I mean, I don't play with the pick anymore. I mean, I always played with my hands, but I actually do more like Mick Goodrich and all that.
Yeah.
So I really play like this, and
Okay.
and I kind of really changed it. Almost, I wanted to try and get like a Wes Montgomery sound, but not so
Yes.
much the way he plays, but the acoustic tone of the guitar, and that's what I wanted to get. And I wanted to get it with the fingers. So think of Mick Goodrich, even though nowadays with Mateo, a gypsy master of the
Yeah.
universe playing 1,000, but it's more like Mick Goodrich now for that. But I never used flat wounds because they were too. Uh, I just they're too thuddy, you know.
Yeah. But that's a wound G on your jazz guitars, though,
Yeah,
right?
the round G on here, and
Yeah.
also Lee Ritenour had a floating pickup on this one. Okay, so he had a floating pickup, and I took it off and I put in the Gibson. The Gibson one that was on all the L5s. I had
Yeah.
that installed on here. Well, this is all hand carved guitar, but and then on the others, I'll use SH59s
Yeah.
by Seymour Duncan, and then uh, and then on the Telecaster too, I have yeah, I kind of switch around a little bit. I have different sounds for the thing, but I have
I
other amps too besides the Fenders, RE, AERs. I had Hendricksons, but basically because of the Fender Tone Master, the ability for it to mimic amps. I mean,
yeah.
really incredible level of mimicking, almost like uh, shoot. The emulation
Yeah,
company,
of the yeah.
the one in Germany, the
Yeah,
one in
virtual amps.
yeah, well, virtual amps, but the one where they profile the amplifiers.
Yeah,
It's
the Kemper profiler.
Kempers, yeah. So
Yeah,
what happened was
they're
about
marvelous.
10 years ago or 12, a friend of mine mentioned about Kemper, but I had a student that I was teaching in Germany, and he had started from the beginning. So yeah, like a Kemper kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
incredible. So now I can get everything. So basically, but it's Fender amps, and certainly there's other amps that have the tone quality. But so that's probably for the if I don't get into the audio part of it, but
Yeah,
for the other part, yeah, those are the and for different styles, for certain things,
sure.
the uh, the D'Angelico guitar, the thin line that's like a
Like a
330.
335. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so that one, because for a while there, I started endorsing D'Angelico, and so that's why. So then I played that guitar, but yeah, they all sound really
Wonderful.
great for the.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, but for how about you? You must have.
I just well, I've got a Line 6 Variax that I use to record because all of my shows that I do, I'm either taking the acoustic guitar and playing that and singing the lead vocal live, or I'm taking an electric guitar and do that live. But the Variax is the one that I do the recordings with. I've got my dad's old 1952 D18 that
Wow.
He and mom got that for him for a wedding present from
Oh,
Williams Music in downtown Shreveport. It's a
ah,
52, and
that's great.
anyway,
Yeah.
so it's but I use mostly virtual amps for all. In fact, almost all the things anybody would hear me do. The live stuff is a little Zoom unit that's $100.
Yeah, and Zoom's incredible. I have
Yeah,
one.
for what it is, because it's compressed anyway. And my bigger thing on the gigs is never what guitar part I'm going to play. It's do I remember the words to this song? Because I've got probably 270 songs that I take on a show, and I don't use a lyric pad. I'm trying to remember that
Yeah, yeah.
because that's good for my brain. At 70 and a half, I want to try and remember stuff. So that's what we do. But
Yeah, but
it is
that's
great.
incredible. Yeah.
Well, it's great to be able to have the technology to do the things that we get to do now because things have improved since we were hauling around Hammond B3 organs and
Oh,
Leslie
yeah, I
tone
know. And I
cabs.
was the one that had to carry one end of it up and down the
Oh
stairs.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely,
And when we
absolutely.
would play like in the Midwest and stuff, when we would travel to Chicago and all those places, and the club would be upstairs.
Of course.
They have those handles that strap on the back of the B3 and climbing up the, yeah, it's,
So that first band was the Men of Distinction out of Dunn, North Carolina. They didn't have a bass player. They had two keyboard players.
oh, there you
Each
go.
guy had his own Hammond organ. We had a
Oh my
B3
God.
and a CV.
Oh my
which is
God.
the which is a B3 in a full oak case, right? We
Yeah.
had dollies on that. They had a one keyboard player had a Fender Rhodes and ran that, and then they had a Fender one of those piano basses.
Yeah.
We ran through a
Yeah, the
custom
piano
amp.
bass one with the thing.
Yep,
Yeah.
the piano bass, the bottom third of a Rhodes piano, into a 315 custom cabinet, right?
Wow.
Turquoise Naugahyde, and
Yeah, the turquoise.
one piano player had a Rhodes, the other piano player had an RMI. We had a 6-ton truck and it had a forklift on the back of it. I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning coming home from a gig screeching because my calves were aching from popping that Hammond organs up on the forklift. But yeah, it's
That's
great that
unbelievable.
it's that was that first band, and were a bloody good group. But that was the equipment back then. Thankfully, it's a whole lot less than that now, and I'm grateful for that.
Oh,
Les, this has
absolutely.
been a blast. Thank you so very much for all of this. As I said, I really do believe for those of us that have been doing this for a while that it's important to go back and say thanks, particularly to somebody that helps you out. And you were a huge help to me. You did a class one day about teaching guitar, and you didn't know that the genesis for that would leave me. I probably taught 5,000 students between Raleigh and I actually taught for a brief time in Granada Hills and here in Texas for 30 years. So I appreciate that. But once again, thanks for all of this. My name's Riley Wilson, and you've been listening to the Band of One podcast with my special guest, Les Wise. We appreciate you checking us out. If you like what we do, like, subscribe, and consider becoming a sponsor. If you've got ideas for a future podcast or you'd like to be profiled, reach out to me to our webpage, which is guitarmadesimpler.com. You can also get in touch with me through my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Band of One podcast. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.